Stephanie, and I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm bringing you into my kitchen today for a cooking moment with Stephanie. So, I have a child with a fatty acid oxidation disorder, which means that a lot of these videos are going to be how to do low fat, very low fat cooking, but still make something super tasty. My husband and I eat the same meals as my son, and so I spend a lot of time in the kitchen, and I'm excited to share with you a little bit about some tips and tricks that I've learned over the years to make cooking fun and easy and tasty. So the first episode is going to be about how to make MCT butter. Now, this recipe is not mine. I got it from a dear friend in Canada who gave it to me years ago, but this really transformed my baking, and I am not often on Facebook, but got on briefly a couple months ago, and people were asking questions about how do you make this MCT butter. And so if you look down in the description, I'm going to actually have a link to my blog, and you can download the recipe off of my blog, or maybe I'll figure out how to post this recipe on here too. But it's super simple. I'm going to walk you through it, and a lot of the time you're actually not going to see my face, because the most important part of getting this recipe right is getting the texture right. So I want to make sure that you can really see the texture. This recipe is really good when you are baking things like cookies and cinnamon rolls and all kinds of different baked goods. So get ready, roll up your sleeves, and get ready to have this on tap for your future endeavors.
All right, so MCT butter has just a few ingredients in it. It has cornstarch, skim milk powder, lemon juice, water, and MCT oil. And that's it, guys. It's really not that complicated, but the few steps that it does take to make this MCT butter, every single step is very, very important. And so I'm just gonna give that information to you ahead of time. The other thing I wanted to point out is that depending on the non-fat dry milk that you use will depend on the granular size. So you'll notice I actually have two different kinds of non-fat dry milk here. And it doesn't matter which you use, but that's why we have this sieve over here that we're gonna sieve our dry ingredients together. And that is an important step that you don't wanna skip unless you want super clumpy butter. So let's get started.
So the first step that you wanna do when you're making MCT butter is you wanna mix all the wet ingredients together. So I'm gonna mix the water into the MCT oil, and then I'm also gonna mix the lemon juice in there too. Okay, because then we can pour it all at once slowly. The second step is you're going to take your sieve and you're going to sieve all of the dry ingredients together, which is really just the non-fat dry milk and the cornstarch. And the cornstarch is important because the cornstarch is really kind of what makes it thicken up a little bit. So we're going to sieve all that together. You're going to get a little bit of a cloud of non-fat dry milk, but that's good. It means your sieve is working and it's crushing those little granulars of non-fat milk. And then sometimes I even take my spoon and I just kind of stir it a little bit to make sure that the cornstarch is mixed good with that non-fat dry milk. The next step is I'm gonna turn my burner on to medium heat. Now it's really going to be medium low because you don't want your pot getting too hot too quick. It really just depends if you have a gas stove or if you have an electric stove, because electric stoves take a little bit longer to heat up. So I went ahead and I put mine on kind of medium low, and I'm going to stir the liquid so it's not getting all the oil at one time, and I'm going to slowly stir it into the pot here while I'm whisking, okay? I'm gonna kind of try to whisk it a little quick. And then I'm gonna alternate with a spoon, because the spoon is going to help get some of that stuff off the sides. All right, so I'm whisking it. And this part is really important. So you want to pour slowly, but not too slow. I actually just learned on the last video that I did. It was the first time I had ever made this mistake, but I poured too slow, and then the oil actually separated from the butter, and I'm gonna show you just a little clip of that at the end. So if that happens, you probably could stick it in a blender and salvage it, but of course I didn't want to show you a video of how not to do it. Maybe I should have kept that, but all I'm doing is I'm whisking, and now that everything is stirred together, I'm gonna just check those sides and make sure that the sides are okay, and that I don't have any MCT butter kind of lingering in those sides. Okay, so the sides are good. And you have to constantly stir for two reasons. One, you don't want that oil separating from the milk. And two, you don't want your milk to burn, because then your butter's gonna taste kind of gross. So now that everything is stirred together, I'm actually gonna make sure that my heat is on medium heat instead of medium low. All right. And the stirring continues. And you start to wonder if it's ever gonna get thick, but it will. It just takes a couple minutes. And while I'm stirring, I'm just gonna let you guys know that this recipe makes about 2 cups of MCT butter. So we put 1 cup of MCT oil in here, and it makes about 2 cups of MCT butter. So it's just something to keep in mind when you're using MCT butter in your recipes. If my sugar cookies call for a 1/2 cup of MCT butter, then I'm really only putting 1/4 cup of MCT oil into my cookies, which is really important to know as I'm trying to calculate how much MCT oil is in each cookie. So we calculate things by teaspoons in this family. So I believe that our sugar cookie recipe that you'll also see on my blog, I believe, I could be wrong, but that it calls for 1/2 cup of MCT butter, which would be 1/4 cup of MCT oil, which would be 12 teaspoons of MCT oil in the entire recipe. And so I kind of go off of that and say, okay, well I made 28 cookies, so each cookie has 1/2 teaspoon of MCT oil. But you can also, some people measure in another metric. Some people do milliliters, so you can do the same thing with milliliters. I am not sure, I have not tried making MCT butter with C7 oil, but definitely check with your dietitian because I think it's probably very possible. I wouldn't see why you wouldn't be able to do it, but definitely check with your dietitian. This is probably also a moment that I have that I can share. I am not a licensed dietitian. I am not a licensed clinician. I am not trying to give out medical information, but I am a parent who spent a lot of time in the kitchen, and so I'm just trying to share with you some of my tips and tricks over the years. So you can see it's still pretty liquidy, but you keep stirring. You keep doing it. And the other thing I want to mention, and then I might turn it off for a little bit and turn the video back on, is that if you have MCAD, this is not the recipe for you. MCT oil is toxic to children who have medium chain issues, so medium chain dehydrogenase deficiency actually. So it's just something to say, but there will be other videos that MCADers and LChatters all can use that I'll create. So I can actually start it feeling, even though you can't see it, I can start feeling that it's thickening on the bottom, okay? So this is a really important step that I just keep stirring in this moment, and that I make sure that I get in those crevices. So you can start seeing it's clumping up a little bit. And I might even choose just to go with the spoon right now for a little bit. Okay, you can start to see that it's thickening. I want you to see that. See? It's starting to look a little more like pudding. Now, the last recipe I did, and I'd never done this before, but it thickened up super quick within a minute. And so what I learned through that situation is that my heat was just too high. So if your MCT butter thickens in like 2 minutes, that is too quick, and you're gonna end up with clumpy MCT butter. But this stuff, you see it's starting to just kind of parboil a little bit, and I'm still stirring, okay? And if it starts to bubble up, you can turn that heat down to low for a little bit longer. It's very similar to making tapioca, if you've ever made tapioca before. The key to it is patience. Now, MCT butter doesn't take quite as long as tapioca to make, but the consistency we are going for is almost like a warm pudding or really melted butter is what the consistency should be like. So now I'm going to kind of show you. It should cover the back of the spoon. So you can kind of see it covers the back of the spoon. And when I go like this, see how it kind of plops down? That means your MCT butter is ready. Again, it's thick. It's like almost as thick as gravy. It's not like a block of butter, but when you put this in the refrigerator, it is going to almost be the consistency of like a margarine that you would get in the tub at the store, like those little margarine tubs. And so this right now, I would view this as ready to go into the fridge. Now you can use MCT butter when it's warm like this, that's fine. But if you do, depending on your recipe, if I were to use this in my cinnamon roll recipe like this, it would be absolutely fine. If I were to use this in my sugar cookie recipe like this, I will probably need a couple more minutes of the cookie dough chilling in the refrigerator. So either way, it's not that big of a deal. But sometimes I like to have this on tap ahead of time because it's just one less step that I have to do. And this keeps for about 2 weeks in the fridge. My friend in Canada said that you can freeze it too and then take it out and blend it. I haven't had much luck with that, but it's something worth a try if you want to. You can also, I'm gonna turn the burner off. You can also cut this recipe in half if you're not gonna use that much in 2 weeks, because it is a lot. 2 cups of MCT butter is a lot of MCT butter. I'll also use this to show you guys how to make biscuits. That's one of my favorite things to make with this. But it does work if you want to have everything. You do have to make sure that that heat is not turned up too high, but you can have this recipe.
I just wanted to give you a different perspective as to what the MCT butter should look like when it is all done. So you can see how thick it is, and you can see that it covers the back of the spoon. And that's kind of how you know when it's done, when it looks like the consistency of melted butter. It will look a little bit different when we get it out of the fridge in a couple hours, and I will take a short clip of that as well, so you get both perspectives. So this is what your MCT butter will look like after it's been refrigerated for a couple hours. You'll notice that it is about the consistency of margarine or melted butter.
Any confusion in regards to how do you make MCT butter, and really excited to cook with you in the future.
I'm looking forward to some biscuits.
Yeah, that might be our next video, is biscuits, using that MCT butter for biscuits. Hope to see you guys soon. Take care. Bye.
Bye.